Hello, Reverend Evan Sackett here. You know, the other day I watched the film The Unborn, and for anybody that's seen it, you know the scene where the woman is talking about being in the Auschwitz concentration camp and talking about the doctor who experimented on twins. For those of you who did not know, she was referring to Dr. Josef Mengele. And all of those experiments that they named in the film, he actually performed. Now, many of you may have heard of Dr. Josef Mengele, but you didn't really know exactly what it was that he did or who he was. He was born in 1911 in Vienna, I believe, or may have been West Germany. His family owns a farming equipment company, and they still own it to this day. It's a very successful company that's simply named Mengele, that sells farming equipment. Well, that taken into consideration, you can pretty much gather the fact that his family was rich when he was born. His father was very domineering. His mother was a very devout Christian who expected discipline and expected structure from her kids. So Mengele grew up in a very affluent lifestyle, surrounded by people who were very poor, because at the time the area that he was growing up in was a very poor area, but he was very rich. As a matter of fact, there's a famous photograph of him as a child, probably 13 years old, pictured with his class, and every member of his class is wearing ragged clothes and he's wearing a suit. It's an interesting picture if you can find it online. Anyway, Josef Mengele wanted to be a doctor. His father wanted him to take part in the company, in the family business, but Mengele refused. So his family, after he graduated high school, paid for him to go to college. Now this was around 1932 or 1933 when Mengele entered college. Now during this time, this was when the Nazi occupation became a real factor. This is when Hitler took power in 1933. Mengele was simply an individual who wanted to do the best he could for himself in any situation. I don't feel that Mengele was actually a devoted Nazi. I feel that he was just a selfish individual that wanted to make the best out of any situation he could. He saw Hitler taking over, so he decided, well, I'll just be one of them. If you can't beat them, join them. So basically he went to college, became a doctor, and I'm not sure if it was after he graduated medical school or before, he won a claim for his thesis on comparisons of different races and the lower part of the jaw. Basically, he wrote a thesis on how you could tell if someone was a Jew by looking at their jaw. So this won him a lot of acclaim from the Nazi professors, and he then joined the SS after graduating medical school, because the SS was the only place you could go into and get somewhere, because the SS had doctors, they had lawyers, they had various other people. He did fight for a time in World War II, a very short time, and he was injured in battle and judged unfit for duty. So he was still in the SS, and he was transferred to Auschwitz concentration camp. He worked at one concentration camp before he went to Auschwitz. Here's another popular misconception. It's believed that he was the chief medical officer at Auschwitz. He wasn't. There were several over him. Mengele was put in charge of determining which prisoners were fit to work and which needed to be sent directly to the gas chambers. So, in his SS uniform, he would stand right at the bay where the trains came in. They would round up all the individuals, usually separated men and women, and he would signal them to the left or the right. Now, there's a lot of speculation over which left or right, which one meant what. I think that to the right meant you live, to the left meant you die, as far as I know, but that could be, you know, I could be wrong about that. But anyway, this was his primary job. Now, Mengele saw himself as a scientist, or he thought he did, so what he decided to do was take advantage of all the specimens that he had, all of these Jewish people that he could experiment on freely and without regret. So he began performing experiments in his laboratory. He did some of the most horrendous things that anyone could ever imagine. Some of the most barbaric experiments he ever performed was one experiment where he sewed two twin children together in an attempt to make the Siamese twins. He amputated arms, he amputated legs for no reason. He performed spinal surgeries, he performed stomach operations. which sounds fine except for one thing: he never used anesthesia. Never used anesthesia. Basically, he ran a butcher shop. Not one experiment he ever performed ever proved anything at all. He just performed pointless, completely stupid experiments, basically just to butcher people. Now, I'm not exactly sure what they were hoping to accomplish, because the Nazis were fucked in their thinking. They thought that the Jews and the Gypsies and anyone who was inferior to the Nazis was in some way different physically. So they would cut open a Jew and try to determine how their organs were different from a regular person. Of course they weren't. So just ridiculous stuff like that. I mean, during World War II, Hitler said that they wouldn't allow any other blood aside from blood A positive to be given to soldiers, because A positive was considered to be good blood. Anything else was Jewish blood. I mean, how stupid can you get? Anyway, back to Mengele. After World War II, he was at Auschwitz for only about 2 years. After World War II, Mengele was presumed dead, and he wasn't really known about. As a matter of fact, he turned himself in to the Allies, and he used his regular name. So he got away. He never was caught. He died in 1979 in Brazil. He went for a swim. He suffered a stroke and drowned. So it really bothers people how Mengele was never brought to justice. He never practiced medicine again, aside from, I think he did perform some illegal abortions in the 50s in Paraguay, but who knows. There is a fictional film called The Boys from Brazil, which is a fictional account of Mengele cloning people and shit like this, which I'd never seen a film like that where they took an actual historic figure and made a false story about him. But it's anyone who wants to know more about Mengele, there's several websites on him. Wikipedia is a good place to learn about him. I've always been fascinated with him because I can't imagine someone doing things more horrendous than he did. And it really scares you to think that such a handsome young man, if you saw a photograph of him, he doesn't look anything like you would imagine him to. Believe me.